The sixth time she showed up at my door, she brought muffins. Not the good kind either, but these dry, brand-like things that tasted like disappointment wrapped in recycled paper. Each one had a little handwritten flag sticking out of it that read, $40,000 is generous, with a smiley face drawn in purple ink. I stood there in my doorway, holding one of these culinary disasters, watching her expectant face turn from hopeful to hostile when I told her no for the sixth time. That's when things got interesting. She kicked over my lawn flamingos with her designer heel, called my home an aesthetic disgrace to the entire neighborhood, and promised she would rot me out like a moldy joist. Her exact words. By week 3 of this insanity, she was playing bagpipe music at 5 a.m. on a Bluetooth speaker on my porch. Not near my porch, not from her property line, but actually on my porch like some deranged Scottish wake-up service I never ordered. My name is Dustin Varela, and I'm a laid-back ex-firefighter who moved to Juniper Grove Estates 3 years ago for the peace and quiet and an affordable mortgage that wouldn't eat my entire pension. My place isn't fancy, but it's mine. A $180,000 market value, plenty of charm with original hardwood floors from 1972 and a killer view of the woods behind the development. I bought it specifically because it backed up to protected wetlands, meaning no construction behind me ever. Enter Camille Dunst, the HOA president and recent self-declared real estate visionary who apparently got her business degree from a cereal box. She'd been president for all of 8 months when she started cooking up this scheme. After securing bids from some shady development company called Premier Living Solutions to bulldoze part of our neighborhood for luxury condos, she realized she needed my property to make the footprint work. See, my house sits on what she called a strategic corner lot that would complete the perfect rectangle for their monstrosity of glass and steel. Her initial offer came on a Tuesday afternoon while I was power washing my deck. $40,000 cash, she said with a straight face and a cold stare that could freeze hell over. She actually had the nerve to pull out a briefcase full of hundreds like we were in some bad mob movie. I laughed so hard I nearly dropped the power washer. She didn't laugh. She didn't even crack a smile. Instead, she informed me that I was being selfish and standing in the way of neighborhood progress and property value enhancement for everyone. When I pointed out that $40,000 for a $180,000 property was insulting, she said I should be grateful she was offering anything at all since my house was bringing down the aesthetic integrity of Juniper Grove Estates. The woman actually used the phrase aesthetic integrity with a straight face while wearing a leopard print tracksuit. After I declined her generous offer, the harassment began immediately. First came the notice of insufficient porch symmetry, which isn't even a real HOA violation. I checked. Then came claims that my mailbox was causing emotional disharmony among the residents. She actually got 3 of her cronies to sign affidavits saying my standard USPS-approved mailbox was triggering their anxiety. The notices kept coming, each more ridiculous than the last. Excessive dandelion proliferation in my lawn, unauthorized bird attraction due to my bird feeder, offensive garden gnome placement even though I don't own any garden gnomes. She put a for sale sign on my lawn without asking. Just showed up one morning and hammered it into my grass. When I removed it, she replaced it with one that said, "Coming soon, Condo 3B." Like my house was already demolished in her mind. The nighttime. Inspection started in week 2. Camille would show up with a clipboard and a flashlight at 11 p.m., measuring my shrub angles with an actual protractor and taking flash photos of my siding. She called code enforcement to complain about non-regulation grass textures, which the confused inspector told me isn't a thing that exists in any building code anywhere. She filed complaints about my roof shingle alignment, my driveway crack patterns, and the volume of my doorbell. One night, I caught her trying to paint a red X on my garage door until I turned on the floodlights and she skewered away like a raccoon, caught in garbage. She started leaving passive-aggressive notes in my mailbox about property values and community standards. Always signed with her full name and HOA president title like it gave her diplomatic immunity. The escalation continued when she hired someone to do a property survey at 6 a.m. on a Saturday, claiming she needed to verify my lot lines for HOA records. The surveyor looked embarrassed and apologized profusely, admitting she'd paid him triple rate to come out on the weekend. She started hosting HOA meetings specifically about my property, calling them special sessions to address neighborhood concerns about the Varela situation. I wasn't invited to these meetings naturally, but my neighbor Gerald filled me in on the crazy. Apparently, she was showing PowerPoint presentations about how my house was a cancerous growth that needed to be excised for the health of the community. She actually used medical terminology, like she was performing suburban surgery. I finally snapped when she emailed me a fake notice of condemnation printed in Comic Sans font of all things. It claimed the city had deemed my property uninhabitable due to structural deficiencies identified by the HOA Inspection Committee. The letterhead was obviously photoshopped and she'd spelled condemned wrong twice. That was it. I forwarded the email straight to the city office, the real city office, along with documentation of all her harassment. Turns out none of her redevelopment plans were legally filed with the city. The luxury condo project she kept bragging about had never been submitted for zoning approval. And here's the kicker. The developer she was working with, Premier Living Solutions, was under federal investigation for racketeering and fraud across 3 states. The city attorney called me within 2 hours of receiving my email, very interested in Ms. Dunst's activities. The city flagged her for impersonating a government official and unauthorized zoning activity, both serious violations that could result in criminal charges. The fake condemnation notice was the nail in her coffin because she'd actually copied the city seal from their website and slapped it on her fake document. That's a federal offense when you're trying to force someone from their home. The investigating officer, Detective Morrison, came to my house to collect evidence and couldn't stop shaking his head at the stack of bizarre HOA violations she'd sent me. He actually laughed out loud at the emotional disharmony mailbox complaint and took photos of my perfectly normal mailbox as evidence of her harassment campaign. The detective also discovered she'd been telling potential buyers that my property was already under contract to the HOA, which constitutes fraud. The moment I carbon copied the actual zoning commissioner and city attorney on my HOA correspondence, Camille's tone changed dramatically. Her follow-up email opened with "Dear valued neighbor" instead of her usual property owner : format. She suddenly wanted to discuss amicable solutions and find common ground that benefits everyone in our wonderful community. The email ended with "Let's find compromise and move forward together in harmony." Too late for harmony, Camille. The city launched a formal audit of the HOA finances and voting records after my complaint. The forensic accountant they brought in found some very interesting discrepancies. Turns out, Camille had won her presidency with absentee ballots, most of which were from residents who'd been dead since 2017. She'd been voting on behalf of deceased homeowners for months, using their votes to push through her personal agenda items. The audit also revealed she'd been funneling HOA funds into a personal investment account she'd labeled as emergency maintenance reserves. Nearly $70,000 had been redirected over 8 months, supposedly for future repairs that never materialized. She'd been paying her cousin's landscaping company 5 times the market rate for basic lawn maintenance. And that cousin didn't even have a landscaping license. The company was registered to a P.O. box and had no employees except Camille's cousin, Brad, who lived in his mom's basement and had never operated a lawnmower in his life. The investigator found receipts for HOA funds spent on her personal vacation to Cabo, which he tried to write off as an HOA leadership conference despite being the only attendee. Camille was dragged into a city hearing where she tried to argue that HOA power was spiritual in nature and didn't require legal clarity or traditional documentation. She actually stood before the city council and claimed that homeowner associations operated on a higher plane of community consciousness that transcended municipal law. The city attorney had to excuse himself from the room because he was laughing so hard. When pressed about the fake votes from dead residents, she insisted those homeowners would have supported her vision if they were still alive, so she was simply honoring their probable wishes. The judge asked her to repeat that statement for the court record, which she did with complete confidence, seemingly unaware she just confessed to voter fraud. The verdict came down hard and fast. Camille was ousted from her HOA position effective immediately, fined $12,000 for misuse of HOA funds, and banned from holding office in any homeowner association within the state for life. The criminal charges for impersonating a government official resulted in 18 months probation and 200 hours of community service, specifically serving elderly homeowners she'd attempted to exploit. The developers from Premier Living Solutions immediately backed out of any plans for Juniper Grove Estates once the legal troubles surfaced. The luxury condo project was canceled permanently. The look on Camille's face when the judge read the sentence was priceless. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. And she actually asked if she could appeal based on the spiritual nature of HOA authority. The judge told her she was welcome to appeal, but suggested she find a lawyer who specializes in spiritual law, which doesn't exist. She stormed out of the courtroom, muttering about the destruction of suburban excellence and how we'd all regret this when our property values plummeted without her visionary leadership.